first we got to talk about, because I did a whole thing on this, right? So, and I covered it objectively. What they tell people, or what the government or the media is being told, or telling us rather, is that we are here to liberate the Venezuelan people. We're here to get rid of a violent dictator. You know, this is the greatest military operation ever, blah, blah, blah. But they're not really going into like the economic reasons why we're doing what we're doing. And the real reason that we went in there and did what we did, now people say, oh, it's for oil, but it goes deeper than just for oil. It's also because the petrodollar is pretty much like dead, okay? So it's like, it's on life support, right? Last year, and I was like one of the only people that reported on this, Saudi Arabia chose to not renew the deal that they had done with us back from the 70s, where we would use the petrodollar to back our dollar, right, essentially. So we got off the gold standard, and we used the petrodollar as one of the main reasons to back our dollar, which makes us the reserve currency, because everyone has to do their deals in oil when they deal with the Saudi royal family in dollars. Well, now they're accepting other forms of currency to include BRICS countries. So they haven't renewed that agreement that we struck with them in the 1970s, right? Well, that's a big problem for us, because our dollar is pretty much backed by that. It's the main reason why we're able to print all this currency with no consequence, right? Yeah, we get some inflation, but we're the reserve currency, so it gives us a lot of leverage, and this is why America's been able to be so prosperous for so long. So the petrodollar is on life support. Then also another important thing to understand is that
we're on a petrodollar standard.
Yes, it's a big reason why our dollar is so strong, is because of the petrodollar. Yeah.
So the Fed relies upon oil.
That's a component to it, yes. And what I'm saying is, Saudi Arabia last year chose to not renew, and it didn't hit the news cycle at all. Like, I was one of the only people that talked about it on Twitter and mentioned it, because I knew right then and there, and I talked about this first in 2023, and then I talked about it in 2024, but no one cared because it was an election year.
So it's been ever since the gold standard was removed in, what was it, the 70s? It's been on a petrodollar.
Nixon struck a deal with Saudi Arabia to basically make them do all their oil sales in U.S. dollars, and that forces other countries to keep U.S. dollars to buy oil, because everyone needs oil. But
you're not saying that the U.S. dollar is based on petro completely, because they say that the Fed is based on nothing and they can print more money. How does the petro dollar differ from the Fed?
No, well, what I'm saying is that one of the reasons why us printing money, ridiculously, and we don't deal with consequences for it, is because there's a need for our dollars all across the world to purchase oil. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, fair. So, and I won't get too more complicated than that, but like, that was a big deal that we had that made our currency very strong, right? Last year, Saudi Arabia decided to not honor that deal anymore, right? Where now they're not doing all their transactions in dollars like they used to do. That obviously is going to weaken our dollar to a degree. Now, the other problem here, and this happened last year, no one reported on it, right? The other problem is that we have petroleum reserves. Of these petroleum reserves, we've been using it the past couple of years under the Biden administration into the Trump administration, and we're running low with these petroleum reserves. These petroleum reserves are supposed to only be used in times of war or emergencies, but we know how politicians are. They want votes, they don't want to have low approval ratings, etc. So they started to slowly release these barrels of oil into the market to keep gas prices stable. Remember when everyone was complaining about milk and eggs and everything else like that being too expensive? They were releasing this oil from our reserves the whole time. So we got two things against us that are going bad. We got the petrodollar weak, and we're using our reserves. The third thing, which was the red line, which is why we actually invaded, which I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, is Venezuela was gearing up to start accepting BRICS currency, led by the yuan with the Chinese, right?
Which is what they were doing that day, the same day Maduro was meeting with the Chinese in order to deal oil in yuan.
It could have been anything, but we do know that the Chinese absolutely, and Venezuela is going to basically become a BRICS country. And the problem with that is that it's on our hemisphere, and by being a BRICS country, that would challenge our hegemon as the reserve currency, and it would hurt our position with our dollar. Anytime a dictator or anybody threatens our dollar, just like they did with Gaddafi, they kill him. So what happened with Maduro was reserves are low, petrodollar on life support. He wants to go ahead and start accepting a BRICS currency instead of US dollars for the oil. So the US is like, okay, Venezuela has the highest reserves. Oh, and another thing also. Now, some people in the chat are going to say, oh, Myron, well, We have our own oil in America. Why did we need to invade? What are you talking about? Well, here's the difference. The shale oil that we have here is not the nice, black, thick oil, pause.
It's crude.
That Venezuela and Saudi Arabia have. And the thing is that our entire oil infrastructure, our refineries in America, are based on that type of oil that we get from the Saudis and the oil that Venezuela has. So the oil that we have is expensive to deal with and refine. And our infrastructure basically needs that type of oil in Venezuela and Saudi to work. Now, you know, what we could do, sorry, I was going to say something about that. But yeah, so those are, all these factors led into why they invaded. Now, when Trump came into office, right, one of the first things he did was he labeled Tren de Araguas as a terrorist organization. He did that on purpose. The reason why he did that was because if you label a drug trafficking organization as an FTO or a foreign terrorist organization, you now can use military assets and the intelligence community, right, to go after that organization. So what he basically did was he said, okay, this guy Maduro and his entire gang, they're Al-Qaeda now. They went from criminals to enemy combatants. That's why we have the justification to these kinetic strikes on boats.